Birds are flocking to Bernie Sanders. No, I don't mean voters. I mean actual birds. Bernie Sanders has expanded his appeal, I think we could say, over the weekend to include the broader animal kingdom when a bird landed on his podium in Portland, Oregon. And it's a very, very funny clip. People were going crazy in the stadium, Lewis. It's just such an unusual thing, a bird that Bernie Sanders was talking about ending up on the podium in front of him. We'll play a few seconds of it. I know it's very visual. If you're listening, I apologize, but we will play just a little bit of it for you here.
What? Oh. Now you see, this little bird doesn't know it. Oh my.
Right.
I think there may be some symbolism here. I know it doesn't look like it, but that bird is really a dove asking us for world peace. No more wars.
Politics aside, Bernie versus Hillary, this is one of the funniest moments of the campaign so far, isn't it?
This is great. Very, very unusual. Were there crumbs around? I don't know. Of course, for those listening, the bird first lands near the podium,
right,
and everyone claps. Then the bird jumps to the podium right in front of Bernie, and that gets a standing ovation from the whole place.
Reportedly, Hillary Clinton is now bringing on 20 to 30 birds to onto the stage at every single rally because she is not to be outdone.
If I would expect her to have bald eagles on
right.
on her shoulders after this, really.
Joking around, this means nothing in terms of the discussion about Bernie versus Hillary, but it is just really, really, really funny, and people really loving it. Birdie Sanders, as he has now been dubbed over the weekend. You can't write this stuff, Lewis. I mean, you really can't.
How can you think that Bernie is not the guy, not the one, right, after this little bird lands right there in front of him?
Would you, when Ted Cruz says that he has been anointed by God to run for president after 6 months of prayer in his Houston pastor's office, and a bird pops up and hangs with Bernie Sanders, which influences you more?
The bird,
right,
by far. If divine intervention is happening here at all, right, it's this example that we just showed you, not Ted Cruz talking out of his you-know-what.
Right, no doubt about that. Who could possibly argue with that? As if Donald Trump supporters didn't already clearly embody and represent the lowest of the low, the real pond scum of the Republican Party. And actually, Lewis, this picture is for the next segment. Yeah, we'll get to that after. A neo-Nazi Trump supporter has called for the execution of Ted Cruz's, quote, slut wife over links to what Daily Stormer founder Andrew Anglin refers to as Jew banksters. Let's put the quote up on the screen for people to look at. Tedman Cruise Ship recently published sexy photos of Donald Trump's beautiful Slav wife in an ad for the apparent purpose of indicating Trump is a bad man for marrying a model who posed for sexy photos. Cruzman responded by lying and saying he had nothing to do with the ad, then saying it would be wrong to expose his slut wife as a shill for international Jew banksters. Surely he is not responsible for the actions of his own wife in the great feminist experimental society. But if my wife was playing a lead role in a Jewish conspiracy to dissolve the border with Mexico, I would file for divorce, wouldn't you? Ted Cruz's wife should be in prison or execute for high treason. Donald Trump's wife should be on the cover of more magazines. Basically a parody of itself, right? If you were to parody a racist right-wing Trump supporter, this is exactly what you would write, but this is all too real.
It's real. Is it real? I don't know. Can you really, like you said, this seems so outrageous to me
Yeah.
that some of it has to be fake.
This
right?
guy is a known entity, though. The Southern Poverty Law Center, the Anti-Defamation League, they're aware of the Daily Stormer. They're aware of 31-year-old Andrew Anglin. They are aware of this entire thing. There's no, I mean, yeah.
Jewish banksters trying to dissolve the U.S.-Mexico border.
They are behind it, Lewis. Why is that so crazy for you to believe and understand?
I would just like an explanation.
Yeah.
On paper.
I was speaking to some contacts at the SPLC and the ADL the other day. They're all very disturbed at the resurgence of websites like the Daily Stormer in the wake of, as a result of Donald Trump's candidacy. And as we covered recently, there are white supremacist websites like Stormfront, which have had to upgrade their servers to handle the increased traffic that's been brought about, at least in part, by Donald Trump, the presidential candidate. And of course, these ideas have always existed. The Jewish conspiracies, all of this stuff has always existed for a very long time. They're being legitimized by Donald Trump's candidacy, and as a result, they're sort of coalescing. They're finding comfort and support in each other, and they're much more willing to come out into the open. Wait till this guy hears about Donald Trump's Jewish daughter, though. I at least, Lewis, I want to say, I hope this doesn't get ugly. This campaign could get ugly. I'm really glad it hasn't so far.
For someone who knows so much about the details of how the world works, to the tiniest detail, Dave, I mean, he knows things we just don't know.
Yeah.
Somehow he doesn't know that there are Jews in Trump's family.
In early January, we did an expose on Reza Aslan, and it was produced and researched by our great segment producer and intern, Noah Ferguson. The video did very well. We had no response from Reza Aslan. We didn't really expect one. We really didn't care about one. And over the last couple of weeks, Reza Aslan had a show he was involved in to some extent get canceled after just a couple of episodes. So people have been Googling his name, and as a result, our video has been coming up, and traffic has really increased to the video. It's up to about 210,000 views now, over 10,000 likes. Saturday, around noon, I look at my Twitter page, and things completely blew up. Reza Aslan sort of commented on the video, but not really. We'll put the tweet exchange up on the screen for you here. Reza Aslan was asked to comment on the video, and he said, "I don't respond to people's homemade videos. If I did, I'd do nothing else. Anyone could say anything on the internet." And someone on Twitter wrote back and said, "I think David Pakman has an office," to which Reza Aslan responded, "I don't know who this is, and I don't care." Interesting. Now, then he clarified after I tweeted a sort of explanation. I said, "Hey, Reza has finally responded." And he says he's not going to respond. His response is that he's not going to respond. He's now had numerous responses talking about how he doesn't have time to respond. Make heads or tails out of that. And then Reza Aslan tweeted a sort of clarifying remark to me saying, "Yep, that's about right. Any expose by someone I've never heard of questioning my academic credentials is not worth it." And then Lewis really blew up Twitter. Lewis, in his nascent venture into social media, coming up with something pretty clever, Lewis tweeted over the weekend, Reza Tactics 101. I don't know you, and you don't have as many degrees as me, therefore nothing you say matters. So let's address this quickly. First of all, the critique that the video is homemade is pretty flaccid. I mean, we have a studio. We've had studios, proper studios, for years and years. But what difference does that make in terms of what's being said? I mean, imagine, listen, Lewis, I don't read books that people wrote at home. All of these people sitting around at home writing books, that's unprofessional. Where else would we apply this?
If you take a very simple example of some 8-year-old sitting in front of a webcam on their laptop at home, and that 8-year-old saying 2 + 2 is 4.
Right.
And then you take Wolf Blitzer and you put him in the Situation Room and you have Wolf Blitzer say it. Is somehow what Wolf's saying more important, or more relevant, or more true?
Yeah, no, I mean, my question is as far as the truth of it. And Reza Aslan, I mean, it was like a dozen tweets over the weekend responding to people all about how he doesn't have the time to respond to us. And quite frankly, I don't care. I don't need a response
he
from
really
Reza Aslan.
shouldn't respond, right? He has no reason to.
A lot of
It's just
people
gonna make him
writing,
look bad.
a lot of people writing and saying the reason you're not responding is because if even a quarter of what is discussed in the video is true, it's really, really bad for your credibility. And it appears that more than a quarter is true, to say the least. So that's the update. A lot of people always writing in saying, has Reza Aslan ever responded? He now has, and it was all about how he just doesn't have time to respond. A lot of time spent on those responses about not responding to the response over the weekend.
Well, maybe if the video keeps doing well and people start applying pressure to Reza to respond, maybe he will feel he'll have no choice at some point.
At this point, I really could not care less about a response. The non-response about responses is all the response I needed, that's for sure. Here's something interesting. The David Pakman show was discussed by Rush Limbaugh yesterday for about 8.5 minutes on his show. Now, he doesn't mention my name. He doesn't mention Lewis's name. He doesn't mention the David Pakman show. But a bunch of people emailed me about this, including James Lowe, who's a radio show host, whose show I was on last week, and said, hey, Rush Limbaugh talked about your clip today. Now, as a refresher, last week we did a clip which is called on YouTube, Embarrassing Trump Audio Exposes Him as Totally Clueless. And it's been doing really well, over 110,000 views right now. And it is basically a transcript of Donald Trump's meeting with the Washington Post editorial board. We put Trump's answers up for you. It was obvious Trump didn't really know anything. He wasn't answering any question. He was deflecting, etc. Rush Limbaugh was sent this video, and he watched it in its entirety, and he commented on it, and he actually does an impression of me, which I think is a bogus impression, but we're going to play it all. I have condensed this. I didn't want to play a 9-minute clip for you. You can find the entire thing. We're linking to it in the description to this YouTube clip. Let's listen to Rush's discussion of our clip and his impression of me.
This reminds me of something. Good job here, Matt. You just reminded me of something I saw last night. I received in the email I think it was a YouTube link, whatever, it was a video, to a couple of guys who have an internet show.
Right.
Two guys that stand or sit behind microphones and act like it's the McLaughlin Group. There's just two guys out there. I don't know who they are. They're just, I'm sure it's a couple guys in a podcast or whatever it is.
Yeah. They
came across, apparently Trump had a meeting with the Washington Post editorial board. And the audio tape of this interview and a transcript of it was released. And the point that these two guys were trying to make was that Trump is a blithering idiot. That he is the most illiterate on policy person that's ever run for the office of president. He doesn't know anything. He's incompetent. He is embarrassingly uneducated on basic things that somebody running for president ought to know. And they give 3 examples from the Washington Post editorial board meeting that Trump had. And the first example they gave, somebody asked Trump if he thinks that there is an institutional racist problem with policing in America.
Right.
These people wanted to know if Trump thinks the cops are corrupt. That was essentially the question. And Trump wouldn't go there. What Trump talked about was high unemployment in the black community. And these two guys that were hosting this show, look at him. He's so stupid. He's so dumb. He didn't even know what the question was about. He didn't even maybe know that there's a problem with policing in America. He didn't even go there. What a blithering idiot. What a fool. I've never seen anything like it. Why, the question was, are the cops corrupt or racist? And he probably doesn't even know
let's pause it
anything.
right there for a second.
And this was sent to me.
Do I sound anything like that? I mean, that sounds like an impression of an old man or something like that. I don't think I sound anything like that.
I find that over the years, when listening to Rush's impressions of anyone, they're usually not very accurate. He's really not good at impersonating people. He's just good at sounding like an idiot.
The funny thing is, and I don't blame Rush for this, he meets 1 million people every year, I'm sure, but he talks about, this is some podcast I found online. I met Rush Limbaugh at a talk radio conference made up exclusively of people who host radio shows. I don't blame Rush for not remembering me. It's just ironic that he came across this and had no recognition of it whatsoever, and just assumes that this is just some online podcast. Funny, but let's continue and hear the rest of this thing.
By the way, by somebody who thought Trump probably looked bad in this. But I looked at this as a Trumpist would look at it. And I would think a Trumpist would see this as a trick question by the Washington Post that Trump cleverly didn't fall for. But Trump didn't answer that. But he also didn't defend the cops. He talked about unemployment. And these two guys hosting this little internet show, whatever it was, just were beside themselves with Trump's ignorance.
Yeah.
And I watched this and I said, you know what? He's answering the problem. And then and this answer, this really ticked these guys off. Trump, in answering the question about whether policing is racist or corrupt, started talking about fair trade and China and how where everybody's at a disadvantage because we're losing jobs. And I interpreted this as Trump sensing a red flag and going nowhere near it. Well, there were two other examples of this. And by the way, don't anybody go try to find this because I'm not going to air it. That's the point of this is not to call these guys out. And since I've already talked about it, look, this is just as good as hearing it. Trust me, that's, explaining things. And I happen to be pretty good at that. So you don't need to hear it. I'm telling you what it was. There were two other. It was a 55-minute interview, and these two guys hosting the show cited three things that just embarrassed them. And these are guys, looked at their late 20s, early 30s, but they just thought Trump was a total embarrassment, total fool, doesn't know anything. Anyway, my point is that a Trump supporter watching this would not be convinced that Trump's an idiot. They would think Trump's brilliant. Anyway,
What do you think?
up against.
What do you think, Lewis, about this whole thing?
He's right when he says that our clip would not convince a Trump supporter of anything.
Yeah.
He's right.
Yeah.
That's not why we're doing it, though.
Yeah, Rush's analysis is not crazy. I'm gonna say it's not a crazy thing. This does remind me of when Howard Stern played a clip of my interview with Pastor James David Manning, the Starbucks seaman guy, and didn't mention our show. I'll remind you of that. I still think that this is better than nothing, but it would be great if people would mention the show when they're playing clips from the show or referencing it or whatever.
But he says he says he was in prison and was tempted with gay sex.
Oh, then he's got a problem.
I think that you admitted in an interview with Cenk and Anna over at the Young Turks that at one point you yourself were tempted by what you call the gay lifestyle. Tell us about that.
I don't know about the gay lifestyle. That's an addition. I was in prison in my early 20s, and yes, I was tempted to engage in a sexual intercourse with a sodomite. No doubt about it. Yeah, I did. I didn't do it. Listen, I thought about at one point in time while I was in prison of committing suicide. I didn't do that either, but I was tempted.
But what were your temptations brought on by? In other words, you're in prison. You considered yourself, I assume, a heterosexual male. And what happened that made you say, maybe I'll have the gay intercourse?
The man had a beautiful cock.
Been a long time without a woman. That's what it was. It was a long time without a woman. And, it just...
I don't know.
All right. So anyway, it's cool, right? I mean, I was glad people recognize a bunch of people recognized by listening to Rush Limbaugh just from the description of the clip that it was us. So is that a small victory, Lewis, of sorts?
Small victory. If only Howard knew that you were a fan of his program.
Right.
Maybe you should have called in. That's what you should have done.
Yeah, well, can be easier said than done, right? This is a very odd story. A seemingly white male from San Francisco State University was accosted by a seemingly black female, apparently because he had dreadlocks, and the black female felt that he had appropriated an element of what she feels is black culture. The video recording I'm going to play for you starts about halfway through the interaction. It seems as though the black woman is starting to physically approach this seemingly white male because of her anger over his appropriation of black culture. I'll be honest, the first time I saw this, I thought that this was some kind of act. I thought this was a total goof. But San Francisco State University has issued a statement on it. The story is all over the place. Apparently, this is real. Let's watch and listen to it first. And I have so much to say about it.
You're saying that I can't have a hairstyle because of your culture?
Yeah.
Why?
Because it's my
You know what box means.
Do you know it was in Egyptian culture? Are you Egyptian? Nah, bro, you're not.
Are you Egyptian? No. Are you Egyptian?
No, but doesn't matter.
Wait, where's Egypt? Tell me.
You know what, girl?
Where's Egypt?
Dude, girl, you have no right to tell me what I can not get. Huh?
Where's Egypt?
Yo, girl, stop touching me right now.
Yo, girl, stop touching me right now. Come back.
Get off of me.
Come back, come back, come back. You put your hands on me, we'll learn.
Like, you gonna make sense and shit because of what the hair I have? That's no reason, yo. I don't need your disrespect. I don't need your disrespect.
Why are you filming this?
Just for everyone's safety.
So for everyone's safety was filming it Nicholas Silveira, who uploaded the video, which has now gone viral. The white student later identified himself as Corey Goldstein, a local DJ. He laid out his allegations in a Facebook post saying he feels he was physically assaulted because he had dreadlocks. And here is the response from San Francisco State University, where they say, "We are aware of the video made of an incident which occurred on campus yesterday afternoon. University police were called to the scene of the incident when it occurred. The two individuals involved in the incident are not SFSU employees. Further, no criminal charges have been pressed at this time to the university's knowledge. The university promotes the rights of the campus community to engage in free speech, but does not condone behavior that impedes the safety or well-being of others. We are taking the matter seriously and will promptly and thoroughly investigate this incident through applicable university channels." Goldstein later wrote on Facebook, Lewis, that he filed a police report with campus police but is not pursuing criminal charges. He said the interaction was longer than the 46-second video clip that was posted, and he reminded us of what we heard sort of at the beginning, that the woman asked whether her friend had scissors, suggesting that she was threatening to cut off this guy's dreadlocks. I don't know the right angle on this, Lewis. I mean, on the one hand, dreadlocks can't be tied to just one culture, right? I mean, the guy in the video mentions Egypt, but ancient Greek sculptures depict men with dreadlocks. Aztec priests from what is now Colombia wore long matted hair reminiscent of dreadlocks. There are many examples. So that's
Celtic cultures.
So number one, the idea that dreadlocks are necessarily tied to Black American culture, I would sort of reject historically. But the bottom line is, why should anyone have to explain why they wear their hair the way that they do? That I think is where I come out on this. I think it is absolutely crazy. If indeed what we are seeing here is anger over so-called cultural appropriation because of a hairstyle, I think that is absolutely ludicrous.
Yeah, I find this woman to be pretty repulsive. I don't get it. I don't know what she's trying to prove. I'm very glad this was recorded, and I hope this video makes her life a lot more difficult, because it should.
We have also received a ton of email from people who are just people seem furious with everybody here. There's people who are furious with the university for the statement that they put out, saying it was just a meaningless statement. People are furious with Mr. Goldstein, because they feel he was making nonsense arguments when talking about Egyptians. I mean, if we are to believe the video, this guy was confronted. How can we fault him for whatever his reaction is? If we believe the sort of backstory here, he was just going about his day, and all of a sudden someone confronts him about how he chooses to wear his hair. And of course, tons of criticisms of the woman involved here, who I haven't received a single email from someone defending her actions, saying, no, it makes sense to question someone in this way if they wear a hairstyle that you feel is appropriating your culture. I mean, not one email of support for this woman, 20, 25 emails total I maybe received about this, so a relatively small sample, but one of our audience nonetheless.
I see no reason why the man in this argument should be on the receiving end of any sort of criticism. He didn't say anything that was factually untrue. He didn't get physical. He didn't say anything disrespectful to her. It seemed like a perfectly legitimate response.
If you feel that I am missing something which would sort of exculpate the woman in this video, please email me. And by all means, I will present it to the audience, because I have not found anybody in our audience so far who's interested in defending her actions based on what we see in the video. You may know the backstory of this whole thing involving Ted Cruz and Heidi Cruz and Donald Trump and his wife, Melania Trump. The backstory was that the Ted Cruz campaign denied any knowledge or involvement of an anti-Trump super PAC putting out imagery of Melania Trump in from a modeling shoot, right? She was almost completely naked. You couldn't really see anything, but at the same time, it was sort of an edgy picture.
And believe me, Dave was looking pretty hard for a nipple.
We looked close. We were looking at that thing like the Zapruder film. And then there was Trump retweeting a picture of a split screen of Melania Trump and Heidi Cruz, where it apparently is an unflattering picture of Heidi Cruz. So CNN host Anderson Cooper yesterday on the CNN Republican Town Hall asked Trump about this and said, what is this? You're trying to be president of the United States. This is pretty childish. And Trump responded with what is arguably the most 5-year-old-like statement we've heard in the presidential campaign so far. Basically, he started it response, which Anderson Cooper absolutely rightly ridiculed. Here's what that exchange was like.
Between you and Senator Cruz about wives. After saying that you were going to spill the beans about Heidi Cruz, you retweeted an unflattering picture of her next to a picture of your wife.
I thought it was a nice picture of Heidi. I thought it was fine.
Come on.
I thought it was fine. She's a pretty woman.
You're running for president of the United States.
Excuse me. I didn't start it.
Oh, but I didn't start it. But sir, with all due respect, that's the argument of a 5-year-old.
I didn't start it. No, it's not the.
Yeah,
no, it's
the argument of a 5-year-old is he started it.
You would say that. That's the problem with our country.
Every parent knows a kid
not
who
a 5-year-old.
says he started
Excuse me.
it.
No. That's the problem. Exactly that thinking is the problem this country has. I did not start this. He sent out a picture, and he knew very well it was a picture. It was a picture of a cover story, Anderson.
Super PAC.
It was a cover story of a picture taken by Antoine Verglas, one of the great photographers of the world, by the way. My wife was a very successful model, like one of the most. It was a picture for the cover of GQ, which is a very good magazine.
This wasn't even it wasn't even a pro Cruz super PAC. It was an anti-Trump super PAC.
They were Romney people. Romney is, very embarrassed that he did so badly 4 years ago. The guy choked like a dog.
Do you
and he
have
lost
proof
an
that he
election
sent it out?
No, everybody knows he sent it out.
We've said that Trump's political knowledge is sort of similar to that of a child, but now he's actually sounding like a little kid. The difference is the 5-year-old would probably have apologized when called out, and Trump refusing to do that.
Yeah, and it's as far as Trump's retort goes, if Cruz's super PAC did do this, if whatever an anti-Trump super PAC did this, can you really hold Cruz accountable at all?
Well, no. Trump's argument is Cruz people were coordinating, whatever. I mean, it's all nonsense. This is all bogus. My takeaway is there anything in that video which makes you think Donald Trump should have the nuclear launch codes, right? Do you see him say he started it and say, give this man the nuclear launch codes? That's the big picture we should be thinking of.
Yeah, that is, I guess I haven't thought about that yet. That's a big one. That's kind of rattling.
If you're on Twitter, send me your thoughts on this. I'm on there at Pakman. The Donald Trump presidential campaign is completely unraveling. Chris Matthews on MSNBC asked Donald Trump about abortion, and Donald Trump said that women should face some kind of punishment if they have abortions. This is crazy. Donald Trump, his inexperience just so evident here. I will play the clip for you. I have so many thoughts on this. Let's take a listen.
Be punished for having an abortion?
Look,
and this is not something you can dodge. If you say abortion is a crime or abortion is murder, you have to deal with it under the law. Should abortion be punished?
Well, people in certain parts of the Republican Party and conservative Republicans would say yes, they should be punished.
How about you?
I would say that it's a very serious problem, and it's a problem that we have to decide on. It's very hard.
But you're for
are you
banning
going to say, well, wait, are you going to say put them in jail? Is that
well,
the
no, what I'm
punishment
asking you,
about?
because you say you want to ban it. What's that mean?
I am pro-life, yes.
What is ban? How do you ban abortion? How do you actually do it?
Well, you'll go back to a position like they had, where people will perhaps go to illegal places.
Yeah.
But you have to ban it.
You ban it, and they go to somebody who flunked out of medical school.
you Catholic?
Yes, I think
And how do you feel about the Catholic Church's position?
I accept the teaching authority of my church on moral issues.
But do you know their position on abortion?
Yes, I do.
And do you concur with that position?
I concur with their moral position, but legally I get to the question. Here's my problem with it.
No, but let me ask you, but what do you say about
It's not funny.
Your church? Yeah, it's really not a funny thing. What do you say about your church? They're very, very strong.
They're allowed to, but the churches make their moral judgments, but you running for president of the United States will be chief executive of the United States. Do you believe believe in punishment for abortion? Yes or no, as a principle?
The answer is that there has to be some form of punishment.
For the woman?
Yeah, there has to be some form.
10 cents, 10 years,
I don't
what?
know. That I don't know. That
Why
I don't
not?
know. I don't know.
You take positions and everything else.
Frankly, I do take positions and everything else. It's a very complicated position.
This is Trump's fundamental inexperience, thinking about these issues, knowing about them, and talking about them. And Ted Cruz's rapid response director tweeted, "Don't overthink it. Trump doesn't understand the pro-life position because he's not pro-life." That is probably part of it, which is that Donald Trump has been pro-choice his entire life, and all of a sudden now he's pro-life, and the Bible is his second favorite book after only the book he wrote, Art of the Deal, etc. But part of this was just inexperience and lack of preparation with questions like those that Chris Matthews asked. Somebody should have sat him down and said, "Listen, Donald, Chris Matthews is going to start giving you the rapid fire questions. And when that happens, if you match his pacing, you'll likely say something really stupid. So what you do is you let Chris Matthews go question after question, and you slow the pace down, right? It's just you have to know this and be prepared for it as someone who's going to be interviewed. And you say, hold on a second, Chris, let's think this through piece by piece. And you change the pacing. And because Trump didn't do that, he ended up saying something utterly insane, which he then had to walk back 2 hours later. And the other thing is, he was baited by Chris Matthews. Chris Matthews came up with something insanely extreme, right? Even within the extremes of the Republican Party, of the anti-choice right, they rarely say you punish the woman who has the abortion. You say, no, the woman is the victim and the unborn fetus is the victim, but you punish whoever is doing the abortion. And yes, if it's like a so-called coat hanger abortion, self-inflicted, whatever, sometimes you'll get a Republican who says the woman should be punished, but that's like an extreme view. And Trump, in his inexperience, hears that question dropped from Chris Matthews and says, well, if I'm being asked about it, there must be some legitimacy to that. And this infuriated, obviously, all progressives, but a lot of Republicans and right-wingers also because of its insanity.
What I found really funny about this is at one point Trump starts interviewing Chris Matthews.
He tried to turn it around.
And for some reason, he's answering the questions.
Yeah.
But would people be offended if Trump said, I think there should be a $10 fine for women who have abortions? It's kind of gotcha journalism here on the part of Chris Matthews.
Oh, I disagree. I disagree
but
completely.
It's not. I mean, we know what Chris Matthews was trying to do. He
it
got what he wanted.
exposes that Trump doesn't know the boundaries of the debate, right?
Yes.
This is outside of the normal boundaries. Yeah, punish women who have abortions. This exploded instantly. Trump had to backtrack. He offered a completely opposite position within 2 hours, claiming that his position hadn't changed. Here's the statement put out by the Trump campaign, where he said, if Congress were to pass legislation making abortion illegal, and the federal courts upheld this legislation, or any state were permitted to ban abortion under state and federal law, the doctor or any other person performing this illegal act upon a woman would be held legally responsible, not the woman. The woman is a victim in this case, as is the life in her womb. My position has not changed. Like Ronald Reagan, I am pro-life with exceptions. So disaster, absolute disaster for the Trump campaign. I don't think we need to read into this that much. Trump is really clueless on this. His positions are concocted and fabricated. He doesn't know the reasonable boundaries of the debate and what the different positions are. And meanwhile, he has gone from being 2 points up in the upcoming primary state of Wisconsin to being 10 points down. So things looking increasingly challenging for Trump. I do not believe he will have the delegates needed to secure this nomination before the convention. Just not going to happen.
If we keep seeing things like this, definitely not.